I treated relationships like business decisions until I met the one person I couldn't calculate. I've always thought differently from most people, not in a gifted kid way, more like everything in life had value, structure, and return, relationships included. My parents understood that, so when they mentioned an arranged marriage, it wasn't emotional. It was strategic. Compatibility, family alignment, stability, future benefit. They even showed me profiles like they were presenting case studies. I looked through them the same way I looked at everything else. Logically. One had strong academic background, another had family connections that would help long term, another seemed emotionally stable enough to avoid complications. I wasn't attached to any of it, because attachment wasn't part of the equation. At least, that's what I thought. Then I met him. Not through anything meaningful. Just a situation where our families crossed paths socially. He wasn't part of any plan, which already made him stand out in a way I didn't like, because unpredictability is inefficient. He spoke casually, laughed at things that didn't need laughing at, didn't seem to care about presenting himself correctly, and for some reason, people liked him for it. I didn't understand why. He didn't fit any obvious value structure, no strategic advantage I could immediately identify, which should have made me ignore him completely. Instead, I started noticing him more. The way he talked without calculating outcomes, the way he looked at people directly instead of assessing them, the way he didn't seem to be building anything with every interaction. It was inefficient, and yet, strangely effective. Then one day, he spoke to me directly, not through my parents, not in a formal setting, just casually, and I responded the way I always do, measured, precise, controlled. He listened, then said, "You talk like you're trying to win something." I remember pausing, because I didn't have a counter ready for that, so I defaulted to logic. "I'm not trying to win anything." He nodded like he accepted that, then said, "Then why does it feel like you are?" That shouldn't have mattered. It was just a comment. But it stayed with me longer than expected. After that, I noticed something worse. I started adjusting my responses around him, not strategically, not for advantage, just differently. Shorter pauses, less precision, less control, and I didn't like that, because I couldn't categorize it properly. Then came the arranged marriage conversation again. My parents brought it up like usual, explaining benefits, stability, long-term alignment, and for the first time, I didn't immediately evaluate it the same way, because I kept comparing it to him, which made no sense. He wasn't part of the system, he wasn't even a variable I was supposed to consider. But I did. Anyway, then I saw him again shortly after, and he smiled like he always did, too casually, too naturally, and said, "You've been quiet lately," which made no sense because I am usually quiet, but this felt different, and I replied without thinking too hard. "I've been thinking." He tilted his head. "About what?" And I almost answered honestly, which I never do. Instead, I said something safer. Things that don't have clear outcomes. He laughed a little at that, then said, "Sounds like you're learning." That shouldn't have affected me, but it did, because suddenly everything I thought I understood about people started feeling incomplete, and I didn't like that feeling, especially not because of him. Later, I found myself actually declining one of the arranged options. Not because it was bad, it was objectively good, but because every comparison I made led to the same problem. None of them made me feel like I had to stop calculating, except him, and that realization annoyed me more than anything else, because I didn't understand where he fit in my structure, or why I couldn't remove him from it. Then one day he said something that made everything worse, completely casually, like it meant nothing. "You overthink people like their equations." I stared at him for a second longer than I should have, and he added, "It's kind of funny, because I think you're better when you stop trying to solve everything." That was the first time I couldn't respond immediately, not because I didn't understand, but because for once, I didn't know which response was the correct one, and that's when I realized the problem. He wasn't part of a system I could optimize. He was the first variable that changed the system just by existing in it, and I didn't know how to calculate that. Karma!